During the Gilded Age and later in the Progressive Era, we can see that there's two different types of immigrants moving into the cities. The pre-Civil War immigrants were known as the Old Immigrants, and they tended to be from Northern and Western Europe. Irish, Germans, English. They tended to look similar to the old Americans that were there. However, that doesn't mean that they were accepted readily. In the pre-Civil War era, and even a little bit during the Civil War, the Irish and the Germans were characterized as uneducated drunks. There was a large amount of nativism that was involved with this. People that were already living in the United States were afraid that these immigrants were going to come over and ruin the American way of life. After the Civil War, though, there is a new group of immigrants that comes into the country known as the New Immigrants. Very confusing. The new immigrants tended to come from Southern and Eastern Europe, places like Italy, Poland, Russia, and there's a large contingent of Jewish population coming to the country. So based on a number of stereotypes, a number of fears, those native-born Americans, sometimes consisting of those very same Irish and Germans that had assimilated, turned against the new immigrants, partially because there was just so many more of them. They came over at about 4 to 5 times the amount of the old immigrants. They tended to be from poor areas. They tended to be uneducated. They didn't have a whole lot of experience with democracy. So the fear was that these new immigrants would come over and they looked different. They ate weird food. They dressed differently. There was a fear that they wouldn't assimilate into our culture. This fear was only enhanced by the fact that they tended to move into ethnic neighborhoods. When they moved to the cities, they tended to be poor, so they didn't have enough money to move and buy a farm or to go far beyond the port where they landed. So in places like New York City or San Francisco, we can see that these large communities develop based on a singular ethnic identity. Places where, if you're Italian, you'd move to New York City and you'd move to Little Italy, and you could buy the food you were used to buying. You could read newspapers in your Italian language. You could go to schools, send your kids to schools where they spoke Italian and taught Italian history. So these ethnic neighborhoods develop in the cities, and they also tended to be very poor. They tended to be what we refer to as tenements. Places today we'd probably refer to as the ghetto, very poor, a lot of crime, a lot of fire danger, a lot of sickness and disease. And there were some efforts to limit the amount of immigrants coming in and limit their voting rights, but really that doesn't occur until after World War I in the 1920s.